Hi, I'm Lloyd Gordon, Communications and Marketing Manager at The Generator. Welcome to another instalment of our Curious Founder lecture series, today on how to scale your idea into a global business with Simon Bird. As people arrive, please be present, be mindful, be thankful of the time we have today. A reminder to stay on mute. Questions can be asked using Slido. I'll drop that link into the chat. Firstly, I wish to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we are gathered today, and from wherever you are joining us from. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We're really privileged to be able to hear from Simon Bird today, CEO and co-founder of RevLifter, who will share his journey from startup to scale up. Simon creates better customer experiences globally using digital to drive that. He's also an investor and board member for a broad variety of technology-based startups. And we're lucky to call him one of our own. He's a member of the Global Leaders Network Advisory Committee for Monash alumni in London. So throughout today's session, feel free to submit questions via Slido. I'll drop that link in chat and Simon will answer those time permitting. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Simon. Thanks for joining us today.
How to scale your idea into a global business, and ultimately my story. I'm going to try and make it as rich and as personal as possible, because when I hear from entrepreneurs, often what's missed is those personal stories about how they actually came up with the idea, what they actually did, versus the concept of kind of what they did. So this is kind of what I'd like to walk you through today. So a little bit about me personally, how I got here in terms of my career, a little bit about the genesis of the idea behind RevLifter, how I got started, and then how I garnered support through capital investment, which I know is quite a tricky thing to do. So I'm going to share a few of my personal stories around that. How I then went from a startup to literally a scale up, and how I'm thinking about a scale up, because I haven't finished my journey at RevLifter. I'm only 4 years into it. So I'm going to share a few ideas and thoughts around that. And then I'm going to summarize by offering you a few of my personal key learnings as well. So let's start off with a little bit about me. So I live in South London in an area called Tooting, and on the map, it's an area called Wandsworth, which is just south of the river. When I first arrived in the UK, that's kind of where I landed. And for those of you who may have been to the UK or London, you end up just either being a south of the river person or a north of the river person. So I'm a south of the river person, and often a lot of Aussies that arrive in the UK end up going to places like Earl's Court and that kind of thing. But I ended up going to Wandsworth about 20 years ago now. Here's my family. So I took this photo on Halloween a couple of nights ago. So I was dressed as a giant penguin with my wife and my 2 kids. I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. I have a lockdown dog, of course, like I'm sure a number of you have got. His name's Max. I'm a keen gamer, so I quite like Call of Duty, and often my guilty pleasure is even playing that with my wife in the evenings. Similar to, I'm sure, a lot of you, I love to travel. That's kind of always what's got me going. And that's to somewhat why I decided to move to the UK in the first place, is that my love for adventure. I also like to give back. So beyond doing talks like this, I'm also the chair of the Friends of First Down. That's where I live in London, and I help oversee the rec, or the recreation ground, as it's called, in my area. So but also I'm moving. So I've been in London for about 20 years, and I'm moving to a place called Broadstairs, which is on the bottom right picture, which is a lovely kind of coastal town in a place called Kent, which is about an hour and a half on the train out of London. So that's kind of me on a personal level. From a career perspective, so I went to Melbourne High back in '95, and then I managed to get into Monash, into a Bachelor of Commerce. And then from there, I sort of, whilst I was doing my degree at Monash, I had sort of itchy feet and decided to actually leave Monash before I finished. And I ended up falling into recruitment, and I spent a little bit of time in recruitment. But I was trying to study at night time, so I never really got around to studying. So I ended up sort of leaving recruitment, but I asked Monash if I could finish my degree over in Canada through an exchange program, which is absolutely brilliant in Vancouver. So I ended up finishing my Bachelor of Commerce Management, and I'm going to highlight, that's kind of the beginning of my career story really, is that I ended up specializing in marketing and HR, and that has reflected my career to date. So When I got back from Canada, actually one of my lecturers at Monash University, Linda Brennan at the time, said, oh, I've got a job at ARI, which is the Australian Human Resources Institute. So I ended up kind of helping them pull together events, and it was the peak body for human resource professionals. So I learned a lot about sales, a lot about promotions. And I've got to say, a lot of sales often gets a bad rap. Sales is one of the most unbelievably amazing skills you can have. And even if you don't consider yourself a salesperson, you're constantly selling to everyone and convincing people to do things. And I remember there was a guy named Michael Edgley that I got to know at ARI, and he told me the catchphrase that I'll never forget. I was quite stressed during my time there. I was only 23 years old. And he kind of said, Simon, you can only eat an elephant one spoonful at a time. And that taught me a lot about kind of management and thinking about how to tackle problems. And I've carried that with me throughout my whole career. I was at ARI, and then I took a keen interest in one of the companies that were trying to sell to the HR professionals I was representing, and they were called TestGrid. And they're a Melbourne-based psychometric testing outfit. So I started to push the idea of online psychometric testing, right across Australia and indeed the world. And I really enjoyed that time there. Again, it was in the spirit of sales, but that was kind of like what I'd consider sort of my HR flavor of my career. At age 26, like a lot of you, I kind of got itchy feet, and I was like, right, I'm going to, at the time, I think you could move over to the UK under the age of 30. So I thought, my idea was, instead of kind of moving to the UK in my early 20s and working in a bar, I thought I'd probably try and come over to the UK and have a bit of experience. So I came to the UK back in 2004, and I ended up in a job in sales, working for a promotions company called SoftPoint. And I learned an enormous amount at that company, and I was helping big companies like AOL acquire customers themselves using promotional tools like giving them, Encyclopedia Britannica. That was a thing back then, that kind of thing. So really enjoyed that. And during my experience there, I got to know the marketing manager of one of the divisions at SoftPoint, and he was telling me that they use a tool called affiliate marketing, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And that's an important part of the conversation, because that's kind of what I've ended up moving into, is that kind of industry called affiliate marketing. And when I explain to you what affiliate marketing is, believe it or not, you all will use affiliate marketing in your day-to-day. So, but you don't probably realize it. So I ended up working for a company called Affiliate Window, which is almost like the platform that enables affiliate marketing. Again, I will explain what that is in just a moment. That then led me on to running a business called Savu, and Savu is basically a global kind of string of voucher code websites around the world. So you probably shop online and you use voucher codes. So I was running voucher code websites all around the world. And then I left Savu after about 7 years to start RevLifter, and I will talk a bit more about RevLifter in a minute. So I would say, to summarize on my career to date, it started off kind of in HR, always with a vein of sales and business development, but then kind of the pendulum swung and I moved more into marketing. And I would say, again, sales is such a valuable skill, so don't turn your nose up at sales. It is such a tremendous skill to have. So let's talk a bit about digital marketing. So digital marketing, as you know, is a really important part of e-commerce. And you're probably familiar with, obviously, the likes of Google and Facebook and a whole bunch of other sort of channels that an e-commerce retailer or an advertiser might use to gain eyeballs on whatever they're doing. But for me, I decided, having been in London for so long, and digital marketing was really beginning to grow heavily in 2004. I then decided that was the industry for me. So I'm going to go into affiliate marketing and just properly explain that to you now. So a subset of digital marketing is called affiliate marketing. Now, affiliate marketing probably represents about 20% or 1 in 5 sales that a retailer gets to their website. So it could be Myer, it could be David Jones, it could be, any number of retailers, for example, in Australia, they're probably using affiliate marketing to drive consumers onto their website to try and convert sales. Now, the thing I like about affiliate marketing is also known as performance marketing. So retailers would pay a commission to a publisher for driving a consumer over to their website. And back in 2004, affiliate marketing was just getting big. Who invented affiliate marketing? It was actually Amazon that invented affiliate marketing. I think a lady selling books said, if I, start pushing consumers to buy books on your website, will you give me a commission? And they said yes. So that's the official story. I have been told by others that actually affiliate marketing started in the porn industry. So I'm not going to go into that, but I've had that. A lot of good ideas do come from those sorts of places as well. So affiliate marketing, you guys probably use affiliate marketing. So you probably use voucher code websites, you probably use cashback websites, or, you might look at a website talking about how to buy golfing equipment or how to buy fashion. This is how publishers monetize their websites. And what they do is they put little links on their pages. And as they drive you, the consumer, over to a retailer where you buy something, they then get, and if someone does buy something, they get rewarded with a commission back to their website. So that's the area of digital marketing that I've spent my last sort of 15 or so years in my career working in. So as I developed the voucher code websites that I talked about before, Savu, they ended up doing very, very well. And we ended up selling that business to a big American company. And that allowed me to get some money through the door, which I then decided to start investing in companies. So I've invested in several businesses, and even today, I'm not investing today, but I see lots of pitch decks come to me, and I know what a good one looks like and a bad one looks like. So if you want me to review your pitch deck, I'm happy to look at that. But I've invested several £100,000 in these sorts of startups. Movebubble is like a rental app technology that allows consumers to easily find a property and then move in quite easily. Bidnamic is to do with Google Shopping, so that helps improve Google Shopping feeds, which is a big thing. So a number of you probably use Google Shopping. There are a lot of companies helping support that infrastructure. WeGift specialize in e-gift cards, so you probably use e-gift cards online. So that's what they do. Big Data for Humans actually went bust, so they haven't all done well. So some of them don't go necessarily that well. And Tailorfy specialize in influencer marketing, and so a lot of them are doing incredibly well. And my portfolio has grown considerably. But the reason why I invested in these companies is that I thought to myself, one day I'm going to set up my own business, and I'm going to learn from these entrepreneurs. And that was part of my personal strategy to eventually lead on to building RevLifter. So let's talk about RevLifter now. So about 4 years ago, I was in my kitchen. That's a picture of my kitchen. And I was washing my dishes. And RevLifter popped into my mind. It was just a flash in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, that's a good idea. And because what I realized at that moment was I was running voucher code websites all around the world. And the time that you and I want a voucher code is typically when you go to a retailer's website, you add something to the cart and you see the voucher code box. And then you think to yourself, oh, I want a voucher code. So then you open up another tab in Google and you type in, the brand name plus the deal term to find the voucher code. And often you can't find anything that works or is relevant. So I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. And so the idea I had was the idea of building, and I'll explain this in a bit more detail in a second, building a retailer their own voucher code page that you see in Google as you're looking for one of their deals. But the twist is, as you open up the page in real time, you personalize all the offers on the page, because you connect that page with the retailer's basket. So if you do that properly, you can understand that I'm buying a pair of shoes, and therefore I might be able to convince you to buy a pair of shoes and some socks in return for getting a better deal. So anyway, I had this idea, and I'm not a tech guy, by the way. So I was like, okay, well, this idea was simmering in my mind for quite some time back in 4 years ago. And then I knew this guy named Ryan. He's now my co-founder. So I kind of went. So this picture of this bar is where I met Ryan, and we sat down and I said, I've got this idea. And then we did that classic thing with the serviette, where we kind of mapped out the idea on the serviette. And his background was technical and was product led, and that was where I'd say RevLifter was born in that micro moment, and that's where the division of labor came. So I kind of said to him at the time, how about I do the sales and you do the tech, and we'll call it 50-50, and let's start this company. And if it wasn't for Ryan, I wouldn't have started the business. And he had already done a couple of businesses before this, so he kind of knew the way to do it. So that was kind of how I got going with RevLifter. And then of course I had to go home and explain this to my wife and say that I was going to quit my job, which I'll talk about that in just a moment as well. That didn't go down too well back then. So just to go back through that idea, so the simple problem we're trying to solve is consumers go to the VoucherCode website. It's a massive thing. About I think $3 billion a year is spent by retailers on coupon websites. And often the consumers can't find deals that work or are relevant. And so the idea was, again, building a product, and we call this RevPage. And RevPage is an iframe that we build into retailers' websites that as you're generating the pages in real time, you personalize all the offers. And that leads to a big increase in cart values and conversion rates. And you can see here in America, if you type in New Balance coupons, we're showing the official New Balance coupons page where we personalize offers. So anyway, so I got this great idea, and then I'm like, right, I'm going to quit my job. But I didn't want to just quit my job. I had a team of 40 people. I was getting paid a lot of money. And so I thought to myself, what do I do? And so what I did was I started calling big retailers, and I said to them, I called Argos and Debenham, some of the biggest names in the UK. And I called them up and said, you know me as Simon at Cebu, but if I told you I was, developing this product, and it's called RevLifter and this is called RevPage, would you buy it? And they said yes. And so I did that enough to give me confidence to eventually quit my job. But before quitting my job, I actually said to one of my colleagues, look, I'm going to quit my job in about 3 or 4 months' time. I'm going to teach you how to do my job, because I didn't want to leave the company that I spent a lot of time building in the lurch. That's kind of what I did. So one thing I would say to you guys, if you're in the same situation as me, think about other people as well, and think about succession planning and making sure you're not leaving your current business in the lurch. So I've got a question already. So how do you know the idea was going to work? Well, I did take a leap of faith. I knew that by building VoucherCode pages, I knew that people would buy from those VoucherCode pages. So I guess I thought to myself, logically, by doing it better, people would buy more. And that is actually, what happened. So it was kind of like, I was already kind of building VoucherCode pages through Cebu, and I thought to myself, doing it in the retailer's own name and doing it better would work better, and that was kind of like my hypothesis, and it ended up, proving true. So on the seed investment side, I started with nothing. And I did, by the way, I've never put a penny into RevLifter like myself, but I went to my friends and family, which is back in November 25th, 2017. And I raised £300,000 very quickly, and then since then I've done 4 other what's called seed rounds, and I've raised in those rounds about £3 million, and I'll talk about then what happened afterwards. I did a Series A later on, but ultimately the people that invested in the business didn't invest in the business; they invested in me, right? So if you're thinking about raising money, they're investing in you, because the idea that you do may not work. But like, obviously you've got to sell the idea of the business. And I think what was important to people that invested in the business is I could show a little bit of traction, and I knew what I was talking about. But that's kind of where I got to. So I ended up, over the years, I've got about 50 angel investors involved in the business. But then, of course, the question you may be thinking is, how do you decide on the valuation of the business? And this is my dirty little secret. I just invented the valuation. I just said the business is, worth £2 million, and it stuck, right? And ever since then, I have kept going up, and I think we're at about £25 million now in terms of valuation. So I've got another question. So there are some blogs about not doing 50-50 with a co-founder. What do you think about it? I think it's a great question. I think it does just depend at the time, and thankfully it worked out for me, but there are many situations where sometimes you do the 50-50 and your co-founder doesn't deliver, or they're not, they don't give you the skills that you need to do your startup, and that can create another problem. And I've heard of lots of startups, buying out the other founder, or the other founder sort of surrendering some shares and keeping. So there are lots of different ways around that. I would say it's important, to know people that have done this before and have some good advisors around you. I could be one of those, for you, for example, because I've seen good, bad, and ugly situations occur. So I'm happy to talk about that at a later point, because it's quite a complicated subject. Another question I've just seen is, to scale your idea, you need to align with great people. How did you find your partners, or how and where can we look for those great partners? So at least in the UK, there are lots of sort of networking events. There's actually an area in London called Silicon Roundabout, which is in Old Street, where a lot of people do get together. And there are lots of different websites that you can use to sort of like match make your founder. There might be those sorts of things available in Australia as well, but that's kind of certainly been available in the UK. So that's kind of what I know that other companies do. But thankfully, in my own networks, I knew Ryan, and I think that's the other important thing I would say is continue to develop your own networks, because you never know that one day you may have already met your co-founder. So it's important to continue to do those events, even if you think they're not going to work out. So yesterday, I went to Selfridges on an event on this tour, and I met a whole bunch of people that I may or may not ever do business with, but I might have met my next business partner. So you just never know. Right, so back onto this story. So building my first, the minimum viable product, or MVP, was, so Ryan thankfully knew this agency. So I went up to Manchester, which is north of London, and he knew this agency that he said would build the minimum viable product, and they agreed to build it for £30,000. They'd do £30,000 worth of work, and they said at the time, look, then how about we just convert that £30,000 into equity? So they built this platform, and it was a little bit creaky. It was okay, and it sort of worked. It did the job. And so I remember calling him up after they'd done the work, and I said, "Oh, thanks for doing the work. It's great. By the way, you now own 1% of the company." And they completely freaked out, because I think they thought that they'd be owning 10% of the business, for example, or 15. They hadn't betted on the fact that I could get a £2 million valuation, which was validated, by other investors. Again, I made that number up. And so there was a story around that. And the story was that the money that I first raised, I ended up just paying them off. So I gave them £30,000 instead of any equity. Ironically, that would be worth a lot of money to them now if they'd left the money in the business, but they didn't think that at the time 1% was enough. So that's kind of what happened there. But if you ever do what I did in that situation, make sure you sign intellectual property waivers, so they, to make sure you prove that you own the technology. So anyway, so in that same trip up to Manchester, I also won my first client, and it was a begging moment. Please, will you give us the business? And we won a business called Simply Be, which ended up being our first client. They're a kind of plus-size women's e-commerce retailer, and that's a game changer. Winning your first client is a game changer, and that's what happened. So that guy believed in us and believed in me. We didn't have him for that long, by the way. It's a whole nother story, but that got us going. Can you advise us about sweat equity? Yes, I can. There's another question I've just seen. It's a very complicated thing again, and it's important that when you do give away sweat equity, that you structure it in a way that's tax efficient for the person you're giving sweat equity to, but also it's done in a triggered way. So they've got to do X, Y, and Z to unlock the equity. And I've never, ever given away more than 1% in sweat equity of the business, especially early on. And they really must deliver. If they don't deliver, then the shares do not vest. So you make sure you've got to add a vesting schedule to the sweat equity. All right. So moving on, so office and first employees. So I sort of, as you saw before, I was sort of investing and advising all these companies. They had office space in WeWork, and so I ended up just camping in a WeWork in between floors for about 6 months. And just it was so funny. It was like looking into a fishbowl, looking at all these successful startup businesses, and I was sort of sitting in between floors, almost like a dog looking through the window glass, looking at some food. and eventually, through the investment, I earned the right to move into one of those office spaces at WeWork, where you've got the beer on tap. And during that time, we met our first employees. So talking about the sweat equity question you just asked before, I met Matt through one of those people that said that they would find us a really good tech guy out, who's now our chief technical officer, our CTO. And that's why we paid that guy 1% of our company, because we found it really hard to find a good CTO. So that's a good example of him delivering on his promises. And at that time, we made the decision to in-house the technology, not out-house the technology in Manchester. So Matt is still our CTO, and he's built out quite a big tech team now. So moving on. So whilst all this is happening, the business is growing. We're improving the platform. So that rev page idea before, I was telling you about personalizing offers. We then had all these retailers, and it was actually Hewlett-Packard in America that said, "Hey, Simon, I love this idea of personalizing offers. Can you do it right across our website?" So we now personalize offers on a retailer's basket, on their product pages, on their category pages, and the kind of deals we're serving in real time might be, we know you've got £60 or $60 in the cart. If you spend an extra $30, then we'll give you a better offer. But those better offers don't just appear on Rev page, they appear right across the retailer's website, and we use machine learning to improve that process. And we're personalizing offers based on whether you're a new customer or an existing customer. So that's I've got to thank Hewlett-Packard for believing in us to start that part of the business. And that product's called RevConvert. So this slide here is showing you what we've currently built at RevLifter. So we have a personalization platform that has lots of cool stuff in it. So incrementality measurement, campaign insights, a whole bunch of things. And that powers RevPage, RevConvert, and the Deals Wallet. RevConvert is the bit I just showed you that Hewlett-Packard believed in, and the Deals Wallet is kind of like a new innovation we're just launching now, where it's a little widget on a retailer's website that learns and gets better over time and personalizes offers using machine learning and product recommendation. But our quest, by the way, at RevLifter is to personalize offers right across the e-commerce user journey. And as we develop our product, we're going to launch like an email product and an app product and that kind of thing. So ultimately, we can deliver our promise to retailers, which is delivering the right deal to the right customer at the right time based on that micro moment. So in terms of the opportunity we're moving into, all your investors, by the way, are going to ask about this. They're going to say to you, how big is this opportunity? Now, I would say to them, in my case, most online retailers globally use deals and incentives to drive consumer behavior. So it's quite a big market, right? This is cool, right? So about 2 weeks ago, Boston Consulting Group released an article saying that there's a $70 billion prize in personalized offers. How lucky am I for Boston Consulting Group to invent that article? And so, and they went on to say that only 5% of retailers in America are using personalized offers, and they think that should be 25 to 50% of it. So I'm like, woohoo, that's great. And so on the right-hand side, I've then gone on to say to the investors, hey, in the voucher code space alone, they're paying £2.1 billion a year to coupon sites, and that's what RevPage is going after, that product. But our overall product is going into a much bigger market, which is worth £450 billion a year. And obviously with the inflation that's going on and some of the headwinds in the economy, consumers do want more offers. Therefore, personalized offers is what retailers will be interested in. So that's kind of helping back my story up. So it's important you guys know your TAM, your total addressable market, but also your SAM, your serviceable addressable market, which is what I'm trying to convey here to you. So Ryan and I set the business up. So Ryan's background is e-commerce. My background is I've already mentioned. And then on the right-hand side, I've attracted a couple of Series A investors, so Gresham and Maven, and about 50 or so angel investors. And I have some pretty amazing names on my roster. So as you go and get your investors, it's important to try and get some celebrity investors, so people that are well known in the market, because that just helps you get other investors as well. In terms of my team, so I've got 42 people in the business now. I've got a C-suite now, and these people come from amazing backgrounds. And when you hire an amazing team, they will help you hire other amazing people. There's an old saying, A players hire B players, but B players will hire C players. So you're better off trying to find the best people in the market that'll help you build your team. So I did my Series A. So I talked before about the 4 rounds of seed raising I did. Last November, I did my Series A. And I tell you what, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. I had COVID quite badly last March, and I struggled throughout last year. And I started my investment process last March, as in not the March this year, the year before. And so I ended up having to speak to about 250 venture capital companies, investors, and I had 2 that said yes. But it was a hard market to raise in, because all the investors were going, I don't want to invest in anything because it's COVID. Who knows what's going to happen? But the irony was, as COVID was going on, online shopping was going crazy. So I was trying to tell them, hey, we're doing really well. And our business tripled last year, helped in part by COVID. But then also during that time, I had to sort of let staff go through the furlough scheme in the UK. And it was a really tough time. But I ended up raising £3.4 million last November. And it was a pretty amazing time. And I got a board through that. And on the left-hand side, you can kind of see, I just added this for your own benefit. I talked about seed before, and this is Series A. These are the kind of stages that a business tends to go through to raise more money. So I'm probably going to do a Series B in 2023. So whilst this is all going, revenues are doing well. So in last year I did about £2.5 million in revenues. This year I'll do about £6 million. Next year I'm aiming for 10. And during that time, I've won some great logos. And so the logos help win other logos. So I'm really proud to say these are some pretty big names I'm working with. And we're processing about 18 million baskets a day. We work in about 13 markets. I would say it's not all been rosy, like I'm trying to say to you. This slide is talking about beware of false positives. So when I moved into that WeWork phase, I'm no longer in WeWork, by the way. It's so easy to start patting yourselves on the back and giving yourself high fives and saying, oh, things are going amazing, etc. It's BS. So things aren't always going amazing. Just because you're winning a ton of awards doesn't mean you're running a great business. And I fell into that trap. Last year, I set up an office in Hong Kong, stupidly, and it didn't work out because I wasn't ready for that market. So just beware of false positives and don't believe in your own hype, or don't drink your own Kool-Aid, as the Americans say. Whilst all this is going on, right, I'm building, I can tell you this. So your investors will say to you, why can't someone just copy RevLifter or your idea? And I can tell you, and this is my answer to them, which is I'm building a moat around what I'm doing. And my moat is data insights. I'm collecting a lot of data. And so the way I try and talk to investors about this is that I say, here's an example of the data we're collecting 1 second ago. So in real time, I'm working with retailers all around the world, and this is what consumers are doing all around the world. This is what they're buying all around the world. I'm collecting a massive data lake, right? And I tell you what, guys, this map gets a hell of a lot busier during Black Friday and when the Americans wake up, etc. It's really exciting. So this data lake means that as more retailers join our service, the technology gets better. So as we've got ASOS, we've got Boohoo, we've got lots of retailers, suddenly RevLifter becomes the authority to say, hey, fashion retailer, this is the best deal you can create to win 1 million new customers next year, because we are the experts at deal personalization. So when you think about your business idea, make sure you're building something that's quite defensible. And that's the message behind this slide. So what's next for us? So we're moving into a scale-up phase. So you go from startup to scale-up, and our Series B, as I mentioned before, is going to be in 2023. I think we'll have about 80 staff by the end of, that should be the end of, not this year, end of next year. We're embarking on ramping up our machine learning and AI. We're launching more products. We're looking at different channels to market. So that's called your go-to market strategy. So I've got about 4 I've identified. So it's about exploring those and proving those out. And the hardest thing you'll find, by the way, is letting go. Every day I give away a little bit more of my baby to my team, and it's bloody hard. It's really hard because I want to be out there selling. I want to be out there doing stuff, and you just got to let go, or else you get in the way of yourself and you'll stop the business from scaling. As the business grows, and this is going to look a lot more academic, this slide, but it's still an important slide to convey. My investors want me to do this, which is invest in people, invest in systems, invest in processes, invest in measures. So how do we, are we doing success, and invest in methods? And an example of that is as I sell to the marketplace, in Newcastle, which is a city quite north of the UK, I've just hired 6 people, sales development reps, they're called SDRs, and their job is to create meetings for business development managers. And I've said to them, look, for every pod, we're going to create 6 pods next year. They're going to make, each pod's going to make back £1 million, but it's going to cost 100 grand to set these pods up. So that's just an example of, scale, thinking about process and scale and growing the business. So my goal, by the way, in the next 2 years is investors love seeing slides like this. In 2 years' time, I will be doing £2 million a month in revenue, which means that my ARR, or annual run rate, will be £24 million, which means that my startup is probably going to be worth between 80 to 100 million pounds in 2 years' time, if this all goes to plan. And investors love that, because investors are giving, one investor that's about to hopefully cut me a check for £5 million. That means that £5 million is going to be worth a lot more in 2 years' time. this is my summation slide before I hope you might have some other questions, but my key learning. So I love this sort of on the left-hand side of this image, which is you've got this plan in your mind, but the reality is very different. And that really has been my story. And any entrepreneur that says to you their plan was the first one, they're either lucky or really naive, or they're not telling you the truth. So I would say part of any entrepreneur's story is luck. It is also hard work. I've worked the hardest I've ever worked in my career, certainly last year, and I continue to do this year. Persistence and resilience, I would say. So just, you get lots of no's in this business. You just got to get beyond that and keep working hard. It is all about people. It's about actually attracting the right people and then retaining the right people, but it's also about getting the right investors around you and the right advisors too. I've really found it hard. I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. When I set up the business 4 years ago, I had a 2-year-old and it was really hard. But you've got to make time for your family because it's not worth it otherwise. And like I mentioned there, choose your investors and advisors carefully. You'll create a very different business depending on who's behind you and whether they genuinely believe in your mission or not. Some investors want a quick turnaround, others are more patient capital. So it's really important you do a good job there too. Anyway, so that's kind of me. I hope I've rattled through quite a lot, but hopefully it all makes sense. And feel free to ask any questions. But I hope you enjoyed my presentation today.
Okay, a huge thank you to Simon for joining us. I have noticed another question just come through Slido. Simon, did you want to respond to that one?
Certainly. So how do you manage or respond, is it, to investors whilst they have different opinions or direction to your plan? I mean, ultimately, of my investor base, I've got about 50 angel investors and 2 institutional investors. The 2 institutional investors own about 20% of the business. Myself and Ryan, we're the largest investors still because we founded the business. And then we have a bunch of angel investors that probably own about, 10, 15% of the business. But so ultimately, those smaller investors aren't driving the business. It's the bigger investors and the board that are driving the business. So sometimes you do get dissidence from these smaller investors, but ultimately they're passengers in this. They're not the main players. So they do tend to fall in line. But one thing I would say is that as you get these investors along, please communicate with them. I communicate with my investors once a quarter. So I send investors updates. I'm setting one this week. And because I communicate so often, they understand what's going on and they appreciate that. Next question is, how many years do you think we should work for employers before we start up? That how long's a piece of string is my answer to that. I chose to start my business, as an entrepreneur at age 39, and my goal was to do it by age 40. And I would say to myself, before age 39, I was a wantrepreneur, not an entrepreneur. I was very entrepreneurial in spirit, but I'd consider someone that puts everything on the line an entrepreneur. But I would say that everything I've done before the age of 39 is part of what I'm building now. But you know what? Some young people do a great job. They can learn on the job, and all you need to do is look at Zuck, from Facebook, etc. These are incredible, but I would say they're few and far between. I think there's a lot to be said for coming in with experience, and investors will back experience for sure. But sometimes by trying and making the errors, that works too. And I would say that places like America, they kind of clap if you failed, if you're a multiple failed entrepreneur. Unfortunately, places like the UK and Australia, I don't think the culture's quite there yet. They don't quite appreciate that failure is actually a sign of success. And I think I'm saddened by that, but I think over time it will improve. Next question, how do you break the fear of failure and not get lost amongst the risks? I think it depends on your personality and how resilient you are as a person and the kind of people around you as well. And how you cope with just terrible things and challenges, etc. I'm quite lucky because I'm really organized and I can compartmentalize and I don't get too emotional about things. But some people, and that's okay, some people do get emotional about things. So it's about who's around you to support you and help you through that process. And I'm a natural optimist at heart. So I'm not a glass half empty kind of guy. I'm a glass half full type guy. So I believe that things will always work out well. And if it doesn't, I'm going to take that learning and it'll help me next time, right? And that's an important way of framing your mind. If you do the same thing over and over again and you keep making mistakes and expect a different outcome, you're a fool, right? So it's important you learn from it and do something different next time. Next question, can you expand on the journey from idea to pilot / launch? Yeah, I mean, given the time commitments today, I wasn't able to go into great detail about that, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards because there's a lot of detail behind it. I just don't think we've got the time to cover that off today. At what stage should we consider to go from local to international? That's a really good question. And I think it does depend on what you're doing. I've seen lots of startups go international too soon and they've spread themselves too thin, and you do lots of things badly. What I would say is that if you fail in your own market where you come from, right, it doesn't look very good to investors. But I think Australia might be a little bit different, because I think what I learned about Australia was, and the reason why I'm in the UK, Australia has a much smaller population, and Europe, with the UK, you're at the doorstep of Europe, and it's easy to service North America from the UK. That's why I'm part of the reason why I moved over to the UK. I think sadly, I think sometimes it does make sense for Aussie businesses to go to America or the UK sooner than later. But I think that's an edge case as a country. But I'm happy to talk to you about that a little bit later on, because and just understand your situation a bit more closely as well. So
thanks, Simon. I'll just jump in here, mindful of everyone's time. We're almost with about 1 minute to go till schedule, but a massive thank you for joining us today. We'll send out a recording to everyone who joined us today, just in case you'd like to review any of the invaluable insights that Simon's shared with us today. One of the key takeaways for me was you never really fail. They're all learning opportunities, and you have those for your life. So there's always the next opportunity to do something bigger and better. You can get in touch with myself and the Generator team via our socials. You can always book an office hours one-on-one session with us via our website as well. I should also mention that the 2021 Monash Generator Showcase will happen on November 24. So look out for an invite to that shortly. Simon, I hope we can get you there, but if not, we'll definitely let you know all about it. So thank you again, Simon, for joining us. Good luck for the future, and thanks to all of you who've joined us today. Thanks very much.
Thanks for the opportunity. Enjoy your evening.